Well, thank you. It's great to be back in Memphis. It's been a while. Can't remember. I guess the last time I was here was the day after that wonderful barbecue event that you all have concluded. So I missed that by a day, but I gotta say, I go to a lot of meals around the world, and that was one outstanding meal. So regards to the chef, Neil, whoever did that, I must say. So I'm from the Indianapolis, Indiana area, although the farm is an hour north of there. My twin brother manages all the farms. And before I go any further, I want to thank those of you from Tennessee for sending us Peyton Manning. That was a wonderful gift. And until, there were neck problems and, things are as they are in the drafts, and he went on to Denver, we loved him, and I think he still loves us. So we're very, very grateful. And just so you know, I'm not biased against other states that are present. My executive assistant is a former SEAL. We stole him from the Pentagon. He's outstanding. Almost, but didn't quite go play ball. That's football in Bama. And we give him the dickens all the time. So he's up for it. He's got a chiseled chest that makes all of us look shameful. So it's all good. And I'll say for the rest of you states, at one time I had state government relations for Dow AgroSciences, and I had everything east of the Mississippi, east of the Rockies. That's a lot of states. So at one time or another, I've dropped in usually to your state capital, and I love this part of the world, and it was easy to come here. The other thing I want you to know is that I'm so grateful for the years I've had and the different jobs I've had, because I'm probably not a master of anything. I could probably hold my own on seed corn and basic corn and soybean productions, maybe swine production. But until I became the director of ag, I had a deep appreciation for hardwoods and softwoods, but had never really immersed myself into it. And that is when I found out, and I trumpeted this at every talk I gave, that we in Indiana can be very proud of our soybeans and our corn, our pork and our poultry. There's a lot to be proud of there. We're one of those I states. But in value of the commodity, hardwoods dwarfs any one of them. And that's when I figured out I better pay more than a little bit of attention to hardwoods. And because I know that parts of this world are also into softwoods, I have been dutiful in paying attention to both in my current role. I was in the UK and went to that wonderful big Drax energy facility where, because of softwood pellets that are buying from, I think it's mostly southeast U.S., but maybe some from Tennessee, that they converted 2 coal-fired plants, and in that move, the UK went from, I think, last in the EU, or nearly last, to almost number 1 in their goals to greenhouse gas emission reduction. And so we have to fight the battle and remind them that that is sustainable in every sense of the word. We're not just taking down forests like some of the tree huggers would like to make us out to be, but that it's actually very sustainable. And so I want you to know that even in this job, I have not forgotten any of you, hardwood, softwood, or anything in between, and we're very, very proud of that. Well, let me share with you what I'd like to do. I'd like to break this up in about 3, and if we add Q&A, a 4th part. I want to just remind, for those of you that do not know what the Foreign Ag Service is about, how we work together with you, how we interface. I'm going to do that, and I'll be fairly quick because you guys seem like you're very quick on the uptake, although I do recognize it's right after lunch. So I'll be quick on that. I might shout now and then or get loud just to make sure everybody stays awake, but I want to make sure you know exactly where we interface, or at least as best we can. And then I'm going to touch on this trade issue. We'll try to get into trade and what's going on. I'll try to do a spin around the world, at least with major regions of the world, so you have a sense of how I feel things are going. I want to touch on the trade mitigation program, the $12 billion that was set aside to bridge farmers, including your farmers, those who raise hard or softwoods, and what we're doing there, because you guys are part of that. And then we can end with a little bit more on trade. So let me just get started. Well, first of all, it is a great honor to be in this role. I never, ever, ever thought that I would be in this role. When I left Dow AgroSciences to go back to Elanco, I thought, well, that's where I'm going to retire. And then I got not one but two calls from a guy named Pence to come be director of ag. And after a lot of prayer and an enormous pay cut, my wife and I said yes, and I loved every minute of it. Partly because we got to come to know your world a great deal more. And that's where I was going to retire. And then I'll be darned if an election didn't sort of create a new opportunity, and I got a call, and so we said yes. And so after 40, 50 some years in Indiana, I'm now a resident of Alexandria, Virginia. But I will tell you, I love it. I'm trying to refight every battle of the Civil or Revolutionary War, and depending on which side you wanted me to come out on, I'll go there. But we are taking in the history portion. So the Foreign Ag Service is one of the two agencies that I have, and the other one is the Codex Alimentarius Office. Codex helps oversee and establish standards around the world. What's the standard or the residue level for pesticides on pecans? What's the level of certain ingredients in infant formula? Whatever standards might exist in food and ag, that's Codex. Foreign Ag Service I'll focus on because that's where we interface the most. We have people in 93 embassies around the world, and from those 93, we cover 171 countries. So next to the State Department, which of course are in every embassy, we're a strong number 2. A lot of our work is collaborative. 75 cooperator groups, and among them there are 4 here represented today, the Hardwoods Council, Softwoods, and others. We help you with MAP and FMD. MAP would be Market Access Program funds, where we provide monies that Congress gives us. You match it exceedingly well in most cases, sometimes 3, sometimes 5, sometimes 15 to 1. Congress loves it because it's great value. And through MAP, Market Access Program, and FMD, Foreign Market Development Funds, we have an outstanding collaboration where we're helping you and you're helping us do the right thing by getting your and all other ag products across the U.S. Over into overseas markets. And it's very important in food and ag because 95% of the population is outside of this country. So if you're going to eat, I know we're in hardwoods and softwoods here, but if you're going to eat, you doggone well better be thinking of exports. We also have some outstanding export credit guarantee programs. Now we're in the millions category, and we can't hold a candle to the Export-Import Bank, but I'll tell you a very good friend of mine is set to become the head of XM. And boy, she loves agriculture like us. So if you have some desire to do something overseas and we can't handle it, I've got the person you need to speak with. And then of course, trade policy. Rather quiet time in trade policy. Not much going on with trade. Yeah, good. Some of you got that. Okay, so I've already talked to you about how I loved this industry and how much we immersed ourselves. And I should do a shout out. I think Indiana's out there. Where's Chris? Yeah, we did not get a chance to know was he over there? We didn't get a chance to know, but at least we got to work. And so I've done my share of visits to sawmills and furniture factories and just plain logs and veneer factories, something Indiana's very well known for. So in case you're a member of one of the 4 wood-oriented cooperator groups, that would be American Hardwood Export Council. How many of you are with AHEC? Okay, some of you, or at least you feed into it. Or the Engineered Wood Association, Southern Forest Products Association, SFPA, yep, and the Softwood Export Council. These are the ones that we would work with. All told, about $7.6 million went to the hardwoods just because so much of that product finds its way to other countries, notably China. More on that in just a moment. I think one of the great new additions is that we helped sponsor the networking convention that expanded hardwood exports into Guangzhou in China. And so that is exactly the kinds of things, that's exactly the kind of collaboration and cooperation. And in case you're wondering why I'm here, Jay asked, and I like Jay, But the second thing is that twice I have been traveling internationally when I've been invited to a southern forest or some tree or wood-oriented group. So I said, all right, we're not going to take any longer. We're going to go visit Memphis, and here we are. So how do we do this? A lot, but not all, is through ag trade missions, an ATM. What in the world is an ATM? Historically, the Department of Ag will have had 3, maybe 4 ATMs a year. This is when a bunch of folks sign up to go along with an undersecretary or a deputy undersecretary, occasionally the secretary of Ag, and the people who are going to sell go, and on day one, they get an orientation to the country or the countries that are represented. Oftentimes, multiple countries come together. And then they go into a couple of days of what I lovingly call speed dating. It's not 5 minutes, it's about 45 to an hour, but we get one of the best matchmakers you could ever find in said country, and they bring buyers, and man, do they go to town. So if some of you, and it's always for mid and small size businesses, the commodities are there, and they play a little bit, but mostly this is branded type product or something other than pure commodities. If you think you should try an ATM, you ought to come along. It is something. We have set all kinds of records this year. We went from 3 or 4 in the past. We will conclude the year with 7, so more, right about doubling. Next year we're going to add net 2 more. And we might even go above that because we think the secretary wants to go on one. And we know that Deputy Secretary Sensky wants to lead one. So we are flat getting after it. We set the all-time high record of numbers of people that went on one when we went to Japan this year. And the all-time high in sales was Guatemala. Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And the reason I say that is don't you dare think that because they might be a developing country or not one of the big ones that we might normally export to, that there's not an opportunity. So I'll give you the analogy that I use. I'm mostly a football fan, but we're also into baseball season, getting toward the end. As we all know in baseball, games are won more frequently by a bunch of singles and doubles than they are triples and home runs. So if we can do an ATM that gets us a single or a double, or even, I'll even take the hit batter routine, if it helps lift up some of you folks in sales, these ag trade missions are flat out working. This year we went to India, Guatemala, South China, Indonesia, and Japan. And that doesn't include the 14 other countries where I just went to do business. On these ag trade missions, while everybody's speed dating, I'm meeting government to government. And we always invite people like Jay and his colleagues. And when they come along, they go along, and whether it's a minister of ag or a vice minister or the head of trade, whoever it might be, they always come along, and to this day we find them very, very useful. So I won't go into more detail except to say you get the picture. ATMs are a big deal. We're going to do more next year. Pay attention, okay? Through this, we are, I hope, deepening it. Now, don't you dare let anybody tell you that we began this because of the tariffs du jour that began and that because we got into some trade issues. I was sworn in October 10 of 2017. 2 months prior to that was when the Foreign Ag Service had the India ATM all saddled up, and that's why 2 weeks after I was confirmed, off we went to India. So Team Foreign Ag Service is ahead of the game. And one way or the other, tariffs or not, we were and we will and we are going to diversify our portfolio. We have to. And I think that's becoming crystal clear when we see how we run up against issues perhaps like China or other countries that just don't want to play by the rules. So, just like you and I have a 401k portfolio with lots of stocks in it, we're going to diversify so that we have less risk and, by the way, open up new markets. Okay, if I don't get there, remind me about the trade mitigation program. I want to do a whirlwind around the world and just give you a quick assessment of how things are going, and I'll even venture some projections and I'll try to remind you to tell you they are that because I don't want you to lock in because this thing is so fluid. And I'll start with an easy one. For those of you that export to South Korea, yes, thank you, the KORUS trade agreement was signed. Now, we sensed it was going to be fine, but it was kind of on hold until we learned that, yes, they were going to do well in the negotiations with North Korea, and so we're thrilled about that. And gosh, we're seeing a lot of ag products there, beef and pork, oh my gosh, climbing, and that's a very, very good thing. The KORUS agreement, for those that didn't know, the food and aggies in this country and the food and aggies in South Korea said, no, don't throw us in that mix. We're just fine. All is reasonably well in food and ag. So, if any of you know a rice producer or a rice miller, have some rice the next 3 or 4 days sometime, because they were the ones that really could have gotten and wanted to get a little more access into South Korea. But they recognized that we had a bunch of plates spinning at that time. They said, don't let us be the reason that something else becomes a new point of uncertainty. So eat your rice and thank a rice producer. I suspect there's some rice producers here, or you know one, if we're this close to Arkansas and other places that produce it. So well done. The other thing that's good that I think should come out of KORUS, or the Korean agreement, is that they worked hard on trying to fix some of the efficiencies, mostly into the ports of South Korea, and in some cases out of. It's been a booger. Holy smokes. So I'm hoping, we have yet to see, but we're hoping that some of those changes will help make for an easier flow of trade, including food, ag, and in your cases, logs. Let me jump across the water, the other water, to talk about Brexit and the EU. We don't know what's going to happen. All the people who seem to be insiders say Brexit will happen, notwithstanding the incredible difficulty. And I think everybody knew that difficulty was going to be there. Europe is making it very, very, very hard to let them Brexit. And it's because, I think the UK has 65, 75, 85% of their trade is with the European Union, so they want to keep a warm relationship, relative free flow in and out of the ports. But at the same time, they Brexited because, in part, they were choking under the regulations that the EU keeps pushing on with these, with the attention to the precautionary principle. It's a stranglehold, and I think it's going to kill them sometime. But it is what it is, and that's why they Brexited. So I cannot project what's going to happen. I'm going to take them at their word that they will Brexit, and somehow, some way, we in the U.S. want to be able to trade. And I would say trade a lot. We have a very strong kinship with the UK. I don't have to tell you about a couple world wars, among many other points of strife. I think they forgave us for our Brexit plan in 1776 to 1790, long ago. So maybe we can get that going. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but I think there's an opportunity there. And I think they're interested. Certainly we are interested. Europe, we cannot dismiss Europe. They're about number 4 or 5 in the food and ag trading in terms of volume and value for us. So it's not a place you can ignore. But I will tell you, it is getting worse. I think you all know what happened to the whole GMO debate. They all gave the old football forearm. And then the newest is their way of evaluating risk on pesticides. I know something about that. Usually you evaluate pesticide risk by saying, okay, what's the toxicity? How safe or not is it? And then what's the exposure? What's the exposure to humans, environment, animals, air, water? They have completely taken exposure out, which essentially takes your maximum residue level down to the level of whatever science can detect it at. So at the very time they're beating up on us, understandably, to bring in pears and apples to the U.S., I know what's going to happen. We're going to ship our pears and apples there, and I'll bet you there'll be a detection of something, and back it comes. So this negotiation with Europe that the President has announced is a very, very good thing. It's not TTIP. TTIP got buried not 6 feet, but about 9 feet deep a couple of months ago. But we're going to go in very seriously, but it will be a very heavy lift. because we cannot. And the world cannot. The world has already voiced its opinion on the precautionary principle. Cannot and will not accept all that we see and hear out of the precautionary principle. So, we'll have to see. But don't let that escape the fact that it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we're going to talk with the UK starting March 29th or 30th. And then the EU probably gets started in earnest after their parliamentary elections and after a new commission is formed. Okay? Japan, well, before I leave Europe, pay close attention. I don't know how much of your product goes there, but when I was at that Drax facility and when I was in Brussels, the Greens have starting to get a stranglehold as well. And even though you and I know those softwood pellets going there are probably the epitome of sustainability, they really are. There's no deforestation going on. I know how quickly a tree replaces one that's cut. But there's a lot of folks saying that's deforestation. It's not sustainable. Might make you determine sustainability at the site of the cutting. So get ready to get engaged, because we may need you to go across the pond and help explain this. Or better yet, bring some of those folks over here. So, lot to play there. Let me go to Japan. I cannot say enough about how important Japan is to all of us, I think. I know there's a lot of exports and probably more desired into Japan by this industry. It's the number one high-value beef, pork, soybeans and corn are right up there at the 2 or 3 mark. And the good news is the Japanese people and the Americans really, really have an outstanding relationship. I've been there several times. And if we can get the Japan-U.S. trade agreement done, which has been announced, now we haven't set a date for that to commence, I am bullish that we're going to get there. I just hope we get on with it, because we don't want 6 countries in the TPP to approve the TPP, because that's when tariff reduction starts for the Aussies and the folks in New Zealand, lovingly called the Kiwis, and other countries. I think we're going to be okay, but it'll be a close one. So we've got to stay focused on Japan. A little bit about China. Love our friends in China, and I mean that. Our friends in the Ministry of Ag and Rural Development, I consider friends, and I think they consider the same to us. I think President Trump and President Xi have certainly a respectful relationship, but it was time that somebody put their foot down and said, you're going to quit stealing our stuff and forcing technology transfer. And it has been fairly rampant, not just in food and ag. Later on, I'll go into Q&A if you'd like on some of the specifics. But it's very prevalent across many sectors. And finally, a timeout was called. And so I hope that we can get back to the negotiating table sooner than not. I am optimistic. I mean, in May, it was the energy industry and the ag industry that were over negotiating. Greg Dowd, my good friend from the U.S. Trade Rep's office, was new. We led those negotiations. And we got a ways down the road. We did. Now, a lot of it was stuff we think they were going to buy anyway, so let's don't give accolades and kiss and make up and come back. But we got somewhere, and we think they can and will make decisions when that green light comes. So let's just hope it's sooner than later. We recognize the importance of China to your market. I know it well. Back when 100 vessels or so of mostly hardwood or softwood lumber were trying to find a home when they clamped down on the ports, we were very, very involved in what to do about that and where that might be shipped and getting the markets reopened over there, the ports reopened, which we did. Happened the second week I was there. 2 weeks in a row we were there. So we recognize how important China and Hong Kong are to you. But we're asking to hang in there a little bit, because some short-term pain, I do think, and I've got a farmer in my family, and I hear very directly from him now and then, I hope that short-term pain results in long-term gain. And let me just be clear, in case it's not clear, we do not want some advantage. I know that themes of the election and other things make it easy for other countries to sort of say, we're being unfair. Nothing could be further from the truth. All we seek is free, fair, and reciprocal trade. And we've had our head handed to us on a platter in many, many, many countries. I'm not going to speculate why, because I have a lot of respect for all of my predecessors at USDA and USTR. But the President called a timeout, and we're going to work through that. You should know that it's not all defense. Let's celebrate Canada, Mexico, USMCA. Doesn't quite roll off the tongue like NAFTA did, but that's what it is. I think is largely settled. They're still working on some final details, but the handshake, I think, got all or most of the major stuff fixed. And we cannot celebrate that enough, given that they are the number 1 and 3 overall food and ag markets for us. That's very important. I think that then lets us take the limited bandwidth at USTR and shift to Japan, Europe, eventually UK. And I'll tell you what, we're going on offense. And I want to be very careful what I mean by offense in case there's somebody here or somebody watching later on a podcast. One of my worries, and I know this is true because they've admitted it, that other countries think that the behemoth called the U.S. will just come in and swallow up any and all their markets. We can be a machine in what we produce. Look at the soybeans, corn, pork, poultry, timber, all of it. We're a very big country. We're very efficient at that. And so the first thing I tell people, every single government meeting I've been in, I lead with the fact that I believe, and USDA believes, and even the U.S. government believes, trade is a two-way street. If I win and they lose, that's not a very long or productive relationship. And the reverse is true, because it'd surprise you how many small countries sell more to us than we to them. It goes two ways, and that's a very good starting point, and I think we are building and continuing to build trust. At least that's my objective. So that's what we're working on. I am comforted, at least, that not all of the same number of tariffs or tariff amounts that were laid on pork and soybeans and others hit the wood industry. Hopefully that gives at least a window. So let me talk about the mitigation plan. This is the $12 billion that has been set aside to go bridge farmers, ranchers, and others to get to the point when we can settle a lot of these. USDA would have preferred not to have done that. I didn't want it necessarily. Secretary Perdue and his DNA didn't want it. Most farmers and ranchers didn't want it. Everybody believes trade is better than aid. But we were not there yet on the timing of getting some of these trade agreements settled. So I'll take it, and I'm very proud that we've got a very operable plan. I don't know that very much of I don't think all three play into the hardwoods, but the $200 million that comes to our group, the Foreign Ag Service, for new market development, I think could be incredibly valuable. So here's the data. Every year, about a couple $100 million in MAP funding, largely MAP, some FMD, is shared among all commodity groups to go help keep markets open, probably helps fund some of your people that are placed around the world. Very valuable, great exchange, great team, great return on a taxpayer dollar. Absolutely. That's $200 million a year. This is a new, one time only, $200 million, and it too can be spread over 3 years. And the excitement that we're hearing from so many people, including at least the hardwoods, I haven't talked to all the wood-oriented groups, is that this will let them get to some countries that they just haven't been able to get to. They had to dedicate most of their money to countries where they were selling a lot and saw opportunities for development. This is a chance, not exclusively, but largely to cultivate new markets. And we're excited about that. And November 2 is the deadline for all those proposals to be in, and we'll announce who gets what just after the first of the year. I might add that before I leave Canada, I realize I left something alone, that I know that there are some disputes going on, particularly in softwood. Not a lot of that language was covered in USMCA, but I think the spirit of our coming together, and I know that there's some counterpoint going on in the WTO, and that's where I hope it will get resolved. Because, I'll repeat it again, and I'll probably catch this phrase again before I'm done, all we seek is free, fair, and reciprocal trade. Nothing more. Nothing more. So let me close by saying, we are all in for you. It is true, we've got a very, very open door. Now, I didn't realize the contrast with the past. I think it's just part of who we are. And I know that if you're not visiting with me and you're visiting with Bill Northey or Greg Eibach and MRP or Ann Hazlett, who's traipsing around the U.S., including Alaska and Hawaii with economic development help, we know the strife being faced in rural America these days. We know that. We come from that. And we're doing everything we can. I used to say that if you have some bright idea that you need to share with me and you wake up with a start at 3 in the morning, I say, well, call me at 8. I want you to call me at 3:30 now. We are leaving no stone unturned to try to get diversification where we can, where we need to, so that we can keep you all in a healthy business. I'll also say that we had it was on a phone call, I guess, our friends that provide some of the fumigants for your logs. I don't know if the constraints in Hong Kong and some of the other ports will be sustained, but it looks to me like fumigation of logs is going to be more prevalent than maybe it has been before. And it is the Chinese law. That is the Chinese law, always has been. They just were looking past that for many, many years. So we're working to try, this is not just me, this is our friends with the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, to see if sulfuryl fluoride could be brought on because, it would be another valuable tool in addition to methyl bromide. And I do know something about that product. I worked with that product mostly on wheat and food mills when I was at Dow AgroSciences, and so I know what it's capable of, and I know what's going on with methyl bromide. So we're working to try to help make those logistics a bit easier. So I'll stop there and say thank you, Jay, for the invitation. Thank you for what you all do, and I hope that if there's a question, a concern, we've all got big shoulders, please let us know that. We cannot act on people's observations, questions, and concerns if we don't know what they are. And we're going to always feel comfortable in calling you, and we have.